Dad, did the car get wrecked for Vasilievich and the...
Ukrainian aviation continues its relentless pressure across the front, with precision strikes targeting key Russian positions. In occupied Bakhmut, a Ukrainian airstrike hit a Russian command post, dealing a serious blow to enemy coordination in the area. This comes amid reports of renewed Ukrainian activity around the city, where Kyiv's forces are probing Russian defenses and striking deep behind the lines. The skies over Donetsk are no longer safe for the occupiers. Ukraine's air force is making sure of that. A Russian soldier films the aftermath of a strike on his comrade's car. Damn, Vasilich's car is wrecked, and the commander says he's missing.
Dad, did the car get wrecked for Vasilievich and the commander says he's damn missing.
Black Sea Fleet commanders have reportedly imposed severe restrictions on their subordinates in retaliation for leaks portraying senior officers as involved in corrupt schemes. They are said to be keeping unseaworthy vessels in service to corruptly divert repair funds. It was reported in June that several Black Sea Fleet vessels regarded as wrecks are undergoing what amount to indefinite repair programs which senior officers are exploiting to steal from the repair budget. The VHK OGPU Telegram channel named the commander of the 4th Separate Submarine Brigade, Captain First Rank Dmitry Skarga, as a key figure in the scheme. Now, the channel reports Skarga is cracking down on his subordinates to deter any further leaks. According to the channel, in order to prevent further leaks of information, FSB officers from Moscow were involved, who are conducting preventive measures with the brigade personnel. However, due to the disclosure of his part of the corruption schemes, Skarga began a real campaign of pressure on his subordinates. Unjustified penalties have become more frequent. Servicemen are threatened with transfer to the Special Military Operations Zone, and legitimate leave was canceled under false pretexts. The situation is becoming absurd and is getting worse. Sailors and officers deliberately wait for the commander to go on holiday or a business trip before submitting reports to his deputy. Otherwise, there is a high risk that the offended Skarga will refuse on principle. There are rumors of his transfer in September, so the situation is getting worse every day. Asked what he thinks about Medvedev's threats, Trump said, "If you talk about nuclear, you have to be prepared, and we are totally prepared."
Medvedev say to you that made you really mad?
Well, you just have to read what he said. He was talking about nuclear. When you talk about nuclear, we have to be prepared, and we're totally prepared.
And U.S. President Donald Trump said he had ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions in response to remarks from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev about the risk of war between the nuclear-armed adversaries. Security analysts called Trump's move a rhetorical escalation with Moscow, but not necessarily a military one, given that the United States already has nuclear-powered submarines that are deployed and capable of striking Russia. Medvedev on Thursday said Trump should remember that Moscow possessed Soviet-era nuclear strike capabilities of last resort, after Trump had told Medvedev to watch his words. Based on the highly provocative statements of the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that, Trump said in Friday's social media post. He added, "Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances." Asked later by reporters why he ordered the submarine movement, Trump said, "A threat was made by a former president of Russia, and we're going to protect our people." The U.S. Navy and the Pentagon declined to comment about Trump's remarks or on whether submarines had been moved. It is extremely rare for the U.S. military to discuss the deployment and location of U.S. submarines given their sensitive mission in nuclear deterrence. Trump's comments came at a time of mounting tension between Washington and Moscow as Trump grows frustrated with what he sees as President Vladimir Putin's failure to negotiate an end to his more than 3-year-old invasion of Ukraine. He did not specify what he meant by nuclear submarines. U.S. military submarines are nuclear-powered and can be armed with nuclear-tipped missiles, although not all are. But any talk by a U.S. president about potential nuclear military capabilities raises concerns, the security expert said, noting that the United States has historically refrained from matching Russia's nuclear saber-rattling, given the risks surrounding the world's most devastating weaponry. "This is irresponsible and inadvisable," said Daryl Kimball, executive director of the Arms Control Association Advocacy Group. "No leader or deputy leader should be threatening nuclear war, let alone in a juvenile manner on social media." Hans Christensen of the Federation of American Scientists noted that U.S. nuclear submarines, part of the so-called nuclear triad with bombers and land-based missiles, were always positioned to launch nuclear-armed missiles at targets in Russia. "The subs are always there all the time and don't need to be moved into position," he said. He grants Medvedev a response to these crazy statements. The United States has a total of 14 Ohio-class nuclear-powered submarines, each capable of carrying up to 24 Trident II D5 ballistic missiles that can deliver multiple thermonuclear warheads up to 4,600 miles. Between 8 and 10 Ohio-class submarines are deployed at any one time, according to the Nuclear Threat Initiative Arms Control Group. "If Kyiv is not ready for negotiations, Moscow will wait," Putin claimed today, repeating his usual talking points about Ukraine's government and so-called peace terms from June 2024. Once again, these are just the same previously written nonsense replies from the Kremlin.
These regions within their administrative boundaries that existed at the time of their incorporation into Ukraine. As soon as Kyiv announces that they are ready for such a decision and begins the actual withdrawal of troops from these regions, as well as officially notifies of the refusal to join NATO on our part, an order to cease fire and start negotiations will immediately follow, literally at that very minute. Shall I repeat, we?
Zelensky has responded to Putin's latest statements by proposing a leaders' meeting. He said if Russia's comments are a real signal of readiness to end the war and establish lasting peace, not just a move to buy more time, Ukraine is ready to meet at the highest level at any time and move from technical talks to direct leader-to-leader dialogue. Russia's Far East nuclear submarine base appears to have been damaged by the tsunami that swept the country's Pacific coast on Wednesday, according to satellite imagery obtained by The Telegraph. The waves, triggered by an 8.8 magnitude earthquake, hit the Rybachi base in Kamchatka Peninsula, which houses most of the nuclear submarines in Russia's Pacific Fleet. A section of one pier has bent away from its original position, possibly indicating that it was detached from its moorings. Images taken by the Umbra space satellite on Thursday morning have revealed. It does not appear that a submarine was moored alongside at the time of impact, and experts said damage to the structure alone would have little military significance. However, questions were raised about whether the tsunami caused any further harm to the base, which was thought to have been hit within 15 minutes of the earthquake. The nuclear submarines housed there, including newer Bore-class craft and Soviet-era Deltas, are the closest to the U.S., aside from those on forward deployment. Rybachi sits inside Avacha Bay, around 75 miles west from the earthquake's epicenter. Also in the bay are the Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky Naval Base and separate missile loading and shipyard facilities. Footage recorded elsewhere on Russia's eastern coast showed waves up to 5 meters high swamping the shore. Heavy damage can be seen in the port of Severo-Kurilsk, around twice as far from the earthquake's epicenter as Avacha Bay. In satellite photographs taken on July 17th, a submarine can be seen moored at the pier that now appears to have been damaged. In both sets of imagery, a surface ship is moored on the western side of the pier. Umbra Space uses synthetic aperture radar satellites, which can penetrate the cloud cover that has prevented other systems from gaining a clear picture of the tsunami's impact on Rybachi. Dr. Siddharth Kaushal, a research fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, said that there was no sign of any damage to the submarine fleet. It looks like it was a surface ship that was moored at the pier rather than a submarine, which is noteworthy, he said. I'm not sure we can really ascertain more than that a pier was damaged, which I suspect probably won't change the tempo of activity at the base much at all. The pier has been left at a terrible angle, said Tom Sharp, a retired Royal Navy commander, which would make it awkward for a ship to enter or exit. There appears to be a tugboat by the tip of the twisted section, he added, which could be involved in initial repairs. If the base assumption is that a wave got in there and bent that jetty, then yes, what else did it do? Mr. Sharp asked. Submarines could be damaged by smacking hard into their moorings, and water could enter open hatches or access points. In separate Umbra imagery shared online, 2 submarines can be seen still moored at their piers after the tsunami. Boats undergoing maintenance would be particularly vulnerable to powerful waves, unable to set sail and escape. However, experts stressed there was no sign of damage to the craft, and the piers used by nuclear submarines are designed to withstand seismic impacts. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's chief spokesman, said the earthquake resistance of buildings and functioning alert system had ensured there were no casualties across Kamchatka. A retired Russian Navy officer, who told the War Zone website he had not heard of any serious harm to Rybachi, said, "These bases were designed and built with the possibility of a nuclear attack by the enemy in mind. The facility would have been shielded somewhat by the geography of the bay. Even minor damage to the base, however, has led some to question whether Moscow is wise to harbor so many of its Pacific Fleet assets in a single location. This is why having multiple bases is a good idea, because you never know when you're going to get rogered by something you haven't seen coming," said Mr. Sharp. The Russian Navy might also reconsider the construction standards of the apparently damaged pier. While the other 9 at the base are built entirely out of concrete, a lengthy top section of that one appears to be a floating extension. "It looks classically Russian," Mr. Sharp said. "Taped on."
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. He's doing the job every day.